Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, I'm going to sound like a little bit of a sicko here. Kansas State on the road at Missouri, I've had circled since the summer. These are two teams that, if you've listened to me in the offseason, two of the teams I'm most high on heading into the season. Now, am I picking these teams to go out and win national championships? No, but I think both of these teams are some of the most dangerous teams in their respective conferences, a Big 12 SEC showdown. I can't wait to get into this one. Now, before we do again, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support for all these game breakdowns, truly incredible. So one, if you do enjoy the content, you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, let us know in the comment section who you guys got in this game. The best part about doing this, learning from you guys, talking ball, whether we agree, disagree. That's kind of the beauty of college football at this point. Can't wait to get into it. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. Kansas State on the road at Missouri, two of my darling teams in the offseason. How we feeling here?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with, like, these are two teams that big power teams don't want to see, I don't think. Like, when,
yes,
Georgia comes in, they're really tough.
Georgia don't want to see Missouri.
Texas doesn't want to see, like, that's a very tough game every year for Texas. These are just two programs that, again, Drinkwitz at Missouri has really changed it around there. I feel like he's got it going very much so in the right direction. And Kansas State's been Kansas State for a long time. I do think Colin Klein and opening up that offense has definitely helped and made it a little more fun. But that program's been great for forever. So this is, like, again, just a matchup of two out-of-conference teams that are those teams in their respective conferences that maybe not competing for national titles yet, but they don't, like, the big dogs of the conference don't want to see.
These teams check so many boxes. I know Missouri's had some struggles on the offensive line, but both have experienced physical offensive lines. The quarterback play, like, these guys aren't going to be top 10 picks, Brady Cook or Will Howard, but they're guys that are gritty, like quality college football quarterbacks. Brady Cook got way too much flack, I thought. Pretty quality quarterback. They play extremely good defense. Both have very veteran groups. I mean, that they check all the boxes of teams that you got to play your best ball against. And if you don't, and they do, like, you're going to be losing to these teams. Now, Dill, this matchup, very interesting. I want to start with Missouri on the offensive side of the ball going up against this Kansas State Wildcats defense that I think is really, really good, led by just a linebacker group that I think is one of the best in the country. Dill, I know you talked about this Missouri offensive line kind of getting off to a slow start. How do we see this Missouri offense matching up against this Kansas State defense here?
Well, and that's what I'm interested in seeing. And frankly, I think Drinkwitz, and if you listen to his press conference,
he wasn't happy
on the Tennessee game, he did kind of imply there's going to be some changes. What is his quote? He's not trotting out those five guys again if they're going to give up 5 sacks. But I will say, I think if this Missouri team is going to really be tough against Kansas State, is they're going to need to establish a run, frankly, against a defensive line that's undersized. And when they put that nose tackle in number 99, he's a handful. But other than him, they're really light up front and they're pass rushers. So I'm interested to see if this Missouri offensive line can at least get the run game going. Because if they can get that going, I think everything else can kind of start filling into place a little bit, and they can be a little tougher against the pass rush.
Yeah, the thing with Kansas State against the run is they kind of, like we've been talking about, some of these teams have gone to more of like that speed approach and just like flying around with their linebackers, making it difficult for these big offensive linemen to get to the second level and kind of put a hat on all this speed. And again, when you have linebackers like Kansas State does, like, running the football is kind of hard. And you look at what Kansas State's done, and this is a Troy team that they just played that is extremely good on the ground. Dude, at this point, Kansas State's only given up 38 yards per game on the ground. My question is, can Brady Cook, because I think he'll have to at points in this game if Missouri wants to win, kind of push the ball down the field? Dill, you look back at these Missouri games, especially yesterday against Middle Tennessee. I mean, it's like Luther Burden or bust on the outside. I know Drink wants to get Theo Weiss more involved. I think it comes down to that. Like, can Missouri's offensive line have a little bit of pass protection? And then on the outsides, like, who's going to step up outside of Luther Burden, who caught 8 catches for 117 yards? The next one only caught 2 catches. Like, do you have any more playmakers to kind of attack Kansas State on that back end? Because in my mind, that's probably where you want to attack this defense.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I only say they got to get the run game going, because if they don't, I don't see how they stop the pass rush. I mean, these two edge rushers are really good. I mean, Khalid Duke looks like when he gets a good jump on you, I mean, he's in the backfield immediately. So I just think that in terms of like getting them off the pass rush a little bit, if you can't run the ball, like what kind of like Troy really didn't, especially when they had to start throwing it every play because they were down, like then you really saw this defensive line and these edge rushers especially turn it up. So I only think they got to run the ball so they can defend a little bit. But I mean, that is also a problem with Kansas State is they're really complete. I think this secondary was really young last year, but they returned a lot of guys and they're really good. And you mentioned it. It has been the Luther Burden show. Theo Weiss, he's probably the guy who's got to get rolling because if they don't get him rolling, it's Burden.
I feel like I feel like what they're doing is kind of what they did with Dominic Lovett last year, just like force feeding him in the slot, and I don't like Luther Bird's a guy that you want to force feed. Don't get me wrong. It's more like some of these other guys do need to step up. Shout out Kansas State though as a program. Like you lose King Felix, and it's like, oh, are they gonna have pass rush? Like they just are getting guys into this program, developing them, and like putting out guys like Khalid Duke's looking like he's gonna be an NFL draft pick as well. So Missouri's offense, I think you're right, probably needs to establish a run and just pass protect for Brady Cook. Let him attack the second.
I think there is like an element if you can play really physical up front. And I think we all thought Missouri was going to have a really physical, tough offensive line. And frankly, their rushing attack's been pretty decent. It's not that certainly has been the problem. They've just been giving up a ton of sacks. But if they can get that going a little bit and again, let Brady Cook kind of rock and roll because you look, his stats have been awesome this year. He's off to a really, really good start, and he can take off and run a little bit too. So I think that's the key to Missouri. I think it all starts because if they can't get the run going, these edge rushers are going to be all over.
I'm telling you, I'm guilty of this too. Brady Cook's one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks in the country. Maybe the SEC for sure.
I know because everyone thought the transfers are going to come in.
Jake Garcia comes in, and I'm like, Jake Garcia is the guy. Jake Garcia is the guy. And a lot of Missouri fans, to their credit, was like, yeah, Brady Cook was very quality. And again, you go back, look at the tape last year, you look at the numbers, like he was pretty damn good and gave Missouri, like won a lot of games for Missouri last year. All right, let's talk about another underrated quarterback here. And that's Will Howard. Obviously kind of starting going last year, replacing Adrian Martinez. Again, one of those quarterbacks at the college level that is gritty, that can make the throws that you need him to make, but also can pick it up when he needs to with his feet. Dill, this Kansas State behind a very big offensive line, two-headed backfield with DJ Giddens and Trayshawn Ward, who I absolutely love.
Good.
Going up against the Missouri defense, that again, we talk about these teams, big defenses, very physical. How are we feeling about Kansas State offense against this Missouri defense?
That's another, you talk about another offensive line that's had a bit of struggles, not in the run game necessarily, but I mean, they had to pull their right tackle. I think both their tackles are struggling a little bit to deal with really quality pass rush. I mean, what I'm looking for is, does Missouri have that like high quality pass rush to really take advantage of that? I mean, they had to pull the right tackle in the Troy game, and obviously Cooper Beebe kind of finished it out. And frankly, when he got in there, their offense started rolling again. So I do think they were able to manage that, but I am interested to see if this Missouri team can get on these edges and make some plays.
That was one of the questions we had for Missouri going into the year. So we're going to find that out real quick. And again, these two teams, as much as like Missouri probably let Middle Tennessee hang around too much, like these teams have kind of rolled their first two games. I think this is the game that you kind of get a feel for, all right, who do you have? Like, who are your playmakers? That was one of the questions, like losing Isaiah McGuire, who was like your darling during draft season. You lose Jeffco to Arkansas. The question was like, all right, this defense is really, really good. I think Hopper's probably one of the best linebackers in the country.
Chuck Hicks flies around. I like the way he plays.
Yeah, no, and they have good guys. It's more like, do they have some guys to challenge Kansas State off the edge? Now, I want to talk a little bit more about Kansas State on offense because we've had a little bit of an argument this morning. Phillip Brooks, dog, I like this Kansas State wide receiver, RJ Garcia. This seems like a offense that is a little bit more balanced. And again, going back to last year when Will Howard came in, he gave Kansas State a little bit more balance. It was really one-dimensional with Martinez. They were running the ball well, not really pushing the ball down the field. This is about as two-dimensional and balanced as I've seen this Kansas State offense. That's what I think makes him so dangerous.
Well, I'm just looking for, again, like Garcia finished the year off really, really well last year. I thought I'd be making a lot of plays.
Yes.
I think so far they've been very reliant on Phillip Brooks. And in a sense, like he's been open, he's doing his thing. It's not
he's
like
your go-to guy for sure.
But like I am looking like, yeah, can Garcia in Jackson, can those two get going and start making some plays on the edge? Because, again, a lot of it looked like to me in the Troy game, a lot of the passing game was centered on the middle of the field to slots and in that sort of.
I do think that's what Kansas State wants to do, though. They want to establish the run, work that RPO, and then kind of like suck in the linebackers, and then hit Phillip Brooks behind these linebackers, which I really like. And again, Colin Klein, I think, is doing
because if you get Phillip Brooks any space, I mean, he's so good. You saw him really good returning punts and kicks or whatever he's doing. I mean, you get him the ball, he's obviously
dog.
He looks like he's even taking his game up a notch in terms of like being a real playmaker out of the slot. Like last year's a really good slot receiver. It does look like he's added some playmaking ability to that game, which again is huge because they are obviously replacing Malik Knowles, who was again he was a very good boundary receiver in college.
You loved Malik Knowles last year. All right, let's get to the pick here. Kansas State, from what I'm seeing, line setting around a field goal. Kansas State field goal favorite heading on the road to Missouri. Dill, where are we leaning here?
I think I like Kansas State, and the only reason I think Kansas State might get slowed down is that if, again, they haven't really seen a front the way Missouri is. I mean, Missouri's a bigger, more physical front than even they're typically used to playing in the Big 12. Besides maybe Texas. I mean, that's the one unit in maybe Oklahoma this year, but I don't know if it was last year. So I am interested to see can this offensive line, again, move guys around and get those creases that they're so reliant on in that run game because they get like a little of space. Ward looked really good. 31 looked good. That's what I'm
31, DJ Giddens. Let's use his name. Absolute hammer.
I don't know the name, but I knew the number. But no, like those two are playing well. But again, I just don't know if they've seen a front seven that plays the way Missouri plays because Missouri's got some really good players, especially at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I'm leaning Kansas State too, and this one hurts me because I am still high on Missouri. Like I'm high on both of these teams, and Missouri's kind of one of those. Like Kansas State, people know about. People are on Kansas State. I don't think I'm breaking the internet saying this Kansas State's a good team. Like they're a top 15 team in the country. This Missouri team, I do think is one of my dark horses, and they still are one of my dark horses, even though it probably hasn't been as clean as you wanted it to be. That being said, if you kind of like look at the first two games, like it's going to be
Missouri plays good in big games, though. I feel like a lot of times they're like a team that they're not like you roll out against Georgia or something and you play poorly. Like they've been sleepwalking a little bit, especially yesterday, and maybe it was a bit of a look ahead situation. But this is a team that when the lights are on and they got to go play a big football game, they're going to probably
legitimately can't wait for this game. This game is I know I sound like a sicko, man. Like I've been looking forward to this game for weeks, for months.
It's a great college football game if you really like college football.
100%.
Again, teams that aren't really in the limelight but are really, really good football teams.
Yes, and one of the better games that we've seen this to date in this college football season. But yeah, leaning Kansas State, more of one that I'm just going to be very excited to watch.
I don't think either of us know who these two teams are. They really haven't had a big test. I mean, Troy's a solid football team for sure, but we just don't know what these teams are. I don't know.
We're going to find out Saturday.
And one for like the conferences, like where are these two teams kind of positioned in their relative worlds? Because frankly, like with the way the top end is shaking out, in both the conferences, they might be like the second.
I'm going to say this real quick. Missouri fans, the SEC don't look that good this year. Like it just doesn't. So this could be a year to really make some noise. So again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel and we'll talk to y'all later.